Welcome to HOBI Conversations. I'm Steven Saunders. This podcast features the people leading our company and reshaping the ITAD industry in their own words. Real conversations about where the ITAD industry is headed, what it takes to lead in this space, and why doing this right matters more than ever. We're not here to narrate the industry, we're here to move it. If you're deep in this world, finding your footing, or just trying to understand where it's all headed, these conversations are for you. Let's get into it. How's it going, everybody? This is Steven again with HOBI Conversations, episode 5. Today we've got a treat. We're here with our Director of Operations, Don Sims. I'll let him introduce himself, but he's just, trust me, been here a long time, been in ITAD a long time, so I'm excited for this episode. So Don, introduce yourself to the people. Let us know a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Hey, Steven. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it. Yeah, my name is Don Sims. I'm head of operations here at HOBI. I've been here almost 18 years. My background was prior to that, I was in more traditional manufacturing, high volume. I worked for, I guess I could say it now, they're not around anymore. I worked for Nokia. I worked for Nokia for about 15 years and then another company prior to that. So a different world, but I've been in this different world for quite a while. So really, really challenging and enjoyable.
That's awesome. I mean, you've seen a lot of changes over the past 17, 18 years. And so I'm excited to just start there, dive into that. So you've been running operations here at HOBI for between 17 and 18 years. When you walk the Dallas floor now versus when you first started, what's the biggest difference?
Well, I mean, a lot of things have changed in the industry and also in our company in that period of time. When I first got here, working in, again, comparing high volume manufacturing to this world, it was challenging in the beginning. I remember the first month walking around thinking, how do these people know what to do next? That was sort of everybody knew what to do, and I was trying to figure that out. But there's several changes at HOBI. I mean, you look at our systems that we've implemented over the years. In the early days, and I'm sure it's the same with a lot of ITADs, you're relying on people. You've got good people, you train your people, you trust your people, but you're still relying on people. And as time goes on, we've implemented systems in place that don't take the place of the people, but they just aid the people in doing the job correctly. We have what we call an intelligent routing system, for example, that guides the operators through the steps for every kind of item that comes in the door. So that has been a big change inside our company. As just looking at the whole industry, one of the things that has kind of fascinated me, and I've talked to my boss Craig about this quite a bit, is just how the clients over time have become more sophisticated, more educated on what we're doing. Obviously, we're looking at data security. We're looking at environmental, doing things the right way. From an environmental standpoint, we're looking at the value of the asset and return in value. And in the old days, it seemed, my old days when I was first here, it seemed that trucks would show up and we would get the material and we would do whatever we're going to do to make the most value out of the material and make sure it's erased, do the right thing. We were always doing the right thing, but the clients seem to be less educated. Today, you've got a very educated client base. They understand what you're doing. They understand your processes. They understand your certifications. They understand what needs to happen and what the risks are. And so it's good for us. It's good for the industry, but it's also challenging because you're not trying to explain to these people what you do. They know what you do. And, so I guess to me, that was one of the biggest changes I've seen.
And when you look at the industry in totality and then the model of HOBI, how we do things, what's something that just hasn't changed, that's timeless, that is still consistent when we come through it today?
We are always and working for our Kathy and Craig for this many years, and I'm sure people say this, and I don't want it taken. I want it taken seriously. Is just looking at the integrity. When you look at data security, for example, we make sure. I mean, nothing goes out of this building that's not either we have a verified erasure record, or we have physical destruction, so that data cannot escape. So that's been something that's just since the day I walked in here that was pounded into my head is, we don't cut corners when it comes to data.
And you came from an engineering project management background with Nokia, not just from a recycling background. So when you stepped in to HOBI, was there anything that you felt like the industry was missing that you were able to transfer from your time at Nokia? Was that, whether that's processes, whether that's people capital, what would you say you were able to transfer over immediately?
Yeah. Well, and we were high volume manufacturing, and you kind of go back to the famous old Henry Ford statement. You can have any color car you want as long as it's black. Well,
Right.
That was my mentality. It's like everything needs to be consistent, everything needs to be the same, and you set it up, and you get all your parts and your people and your machines and your processes, and you go as fast as you can go, and then you manage the exceptions. Here, everything that comes in the door is an exception almost. I mean, I've been here 18 years, and I like to say I could walk out on the dock right now and find a piece of gear that I've never seen before.
Right.
And so that's a fascinating world to try to manage. But coming from that environment and trying to meld those things together, the high volume manufacturing with what we do here in ITAD, I guess just looking at where we can gain flow of material. Again, it's a challenge. You've got clients coming through. You're working it. It's more of a work order job shop type. I worked in a machine shop prior to Nokia, so I saw prior to Nokia. So I saw the other end of it, where you're actually you're pushing material through different work centers, and you're trying to balance the capacity of all the different work centers. So it was a good learning experience for me, and a good mix for me. But coming in here and seeing that and saying, okay, we've got to track each thing separately. We've got to track our load. We got to keep the client material has to remain true to the client. But at the end of the day, how do you build as much economy of scale in that as possible? So I don't know if that answers your question, but I guess just trying to look at it from the standpoint of, how do I get as much high volume flow as I can while still maintaining control of all the different aspects of it.
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds like when you came into the ITAD industry, it wasn't very refined. And so you were able to kind of bring that experience that you had at Nokia, just engineering and production at scale, to a process to kind of implement some new processes over time. And so that being said, walk me through what happens when a truckload of retired assets hits our dock. Where does that clock start? And what are some checkpoints that most people never think about? What happens when it comes in our facility?
Okay. I don't know what people never think about. But I know when the truck comes, as we've described it, there's various varieties of this. Sometimes the material shows up and you have an asset list and you know exactly what's coming in. But in a lot of cases, as we've talked about in the past, it's like Christmas. You open the truck, you don't know what's in there. Sometimes the client doesn't know what's in there,
Right.
and they're relying on you to get that list to them. So, yeah, we pull the material off. Of course, we weigh it in the beginning. We get a weight, and we work to, and I'll talk about this just real quick, mass balance. We work to mass balance. So some of that, let's say you've got 10 skids and 8,000 pounds. Some of that material is going to go into inventory and be sold and be resold, possibly, depending on the client requirements. Some of that material is going to be tested and determined to be not working and is going to be scrapped. Some of that material comes in as scrap. You may have in your skids, one skid may be just full of wire. All of that through our system has a weight, whether it goes into inventory, goes into scrap, or it's just the tear, the pallets and the cardboard and everything. And if we received 8,000 pounds or it's 8,015 pounds, when we complete that load, we need to account for 8,015 pounds from an environmental perspective, and also just making sure that we've tracked that. So I've had some tense conversations when, we say, oh, okay, we're finished. And then we look back at oh, no, we haven't finished because look, we're only here and we've got to get to full mass balance. So that weight is important. The weight is not insignificant at the beginning. We keep things segregated. We want to tie the assets to the client as quickly as possible as we're working the front end, the triage portion.
Mm-hmm.
The worst thing you can do is mix client material. And so we've got systems in place and processes so that doesn't happen. We don't mix client material. But that obviously, once you put a laptop from one client into another client's, you've got a problem then in trying to locate that item. So we tie that material as quickly as we can. We triage it. We tie it with a unique identifier, tie it back to that client, and then we move it on to its proper place, whether it's a erasure in our ITAD area, or it's cell phone, mobile equipment to be processed, or it's pure scrap. It's pure scrap material, in which case we track that we've got over 100 different categories of scrap. We track that by client into different containers, and then we move those to the proper downstream vendor for processing.
Gotcha. Something you said was the data erasure piece and keeping stuff segregated. But HOBI works with lots of clients who have a high bar for security. So we're talking government agencies of varying levels, insurance companies, just large enterprise corporations. HOBI's gone more than 30 years without a data leak. What must be true operationally to make sure that happens? And what are you and your team doing to make sure that that's kept up?
I would say the most critical part of that, the most effective part of that, is the systemic safeguards in the system. We used, and I think I mentioned HOBI Intelligent Routing. We have developers on staff. We've developed this ourselves, and ensuring that you erase the unit. Let's talk about a laptop. You've erased the unit. You've pulled the configuration data. You're moving it through the process. So now you're going to move. Maybe you're going to move to a grading station. You're going to move to a quality station before you get to your final inventory. At every step of our process, our system is looking for that verified erasure record. Mm-hmm. And so if that doesn't exist for some reason, the system stops. So it's great to say, and we do have good people, and we train our people, and I'm really proud of the people we have. Very, very humbled to work with these folks. But at the end of the day, if you rely on people, sooner or later, everybody makes mistakes. I make a lot of mistakes. My boss reminds me of that on a regular basis. But we want systematic processes. So there's no way that unit can even make it to the end of the production line, much less into inventory, much less out the door, if it does not have an erasure record. So systemic systems to monitor that is the only way.
Right. And when it comes to drives that you can't sanitize, what happens to those? Just so our audience watching knows what happens.
Physical destruction.
Gotcha.
Yeah, physical
absolutely.
Destruction.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
what is a request from a client that sounds simple in my seat from a sales conversation that turns out to be super difficult when it comes to operations on the floor?
We went over, okay, it's great to watch these interviews, but we did go over these questions before, so I appreciate that. So and I thought about this one quite a bit.
Yeah.
And it's always good to have simple is best, but simple is not always what the client wants. So I thought about what really causes us issues. And maybe 17, 18 years ago, there were things that I would cringe. Oh gosh, the client wants this. They want this kind. Nowadays, the systems that we have in place and the maturity of our IR2 system and the way we code our loads as they come in, I couldn't really think of too much that we couldn't either do today, or with a quick change to our system, which again, we own it, we own the developers and so forth. Quick change to our system could not handle it. I could not think of too many things. One example that came up, and anybody in our industry knows this, but a few years ago we didn't know it. It was it was fairly new, is the litigation hold, where clients send you material and they say, okay, I want a full inventory. I want it in, 5 days or 3 days or whatever. But don't erase these devices. I'm going to send you these. I want my full inventory. I want everything, but I don't want you to erase them until I give you permission to erase. That was when that was new. It's a little bit nerve wracking because, it was coming from one client. You go have a meeting, you sit down, and say, okay, we can't erase these units. Immediately our developer said, no. You don't need to have that meeting. We're going to hardwire this into the coding. So now we put a seat, I won't go into our nomenclature, but basically we code it from the very beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And that prevents our proprietary erasure software from kicking off. The erasure software will still pull the data, the configuration data, but it will not kick off the erasure. So it's not just, people don't have to remember not to do that. So that's one of those, when you talk about, what's something that worried me in the beginning, doesn't worry me at all now. If we've got litigation hold, because our processes are set up for that. So I can't think of an example. There may be something, but right now I can't think of an example of anything that would just be horrible to try to implement on the floor.
And that's good for the people listening to hear, potential partners, is that HOBI Shield has some advantages. Having that in-house developed erasure software means we have full autonomy over making sure these weird situations like this, we have full control over. And I think that's something that's a huge, huge advantage. Yeah. Now, the future, we'd say, is data centers. Everybody's talking about it. Everybody's talking about AI. I mean, if you don't know about it, you're living under a rock, which, maybe I need to be under that rock too. But when a client is retiring a full data hall rather than just a few racks, how does the operations plan change? And what do you decide before anybody shows up on site?
Well, with our data center work, obviously getting the requirements up front is essential. We've got clients that want, we've got clients that just say, here, take all this equipment. And it's basically at that level. We've got other clients that say, okay, here is my asset list. I want you to verify all the asset numbers before you take this material out. I want all the hard drives destroyed on site. I want to witness the destruction on site before the material leaves the building, and everything in between. And so making sure you understand what the client wants, and that it's very, very clear. And I think you and I talked about this, and how far in advance, 6 weeks, a month, I don't care. We can have that meeting. I think the key is somewhere in those meetings and those discussions, you've got a person who is living in that data center.
Right.
And sometimes they're heavily involved in these discussions, and I would have to say sometimes they don't seem to be. So the day you and your team walk into that data center, some things change from the original agreement, and just making sure that everybody's on the same page on the client side. Some great, smart people working in those data centers that may not, sometimes they are the head of the project, and sometimes they're not the head of the project. And so having somebody, there's always exceptions, and having somebody there that you can discuss with and just make sure, is it this equipment? Okay, I was told to take all the switches, but now you're telling me you want to keep the switches, and just somebody that can give you all the information. I just tell a quick little story. I was in one data center, and it was a fairly involved. We were looking at asset numbers and so forth, and the guy there was just top notch. He knew everything. He knew where everything was. He understood the project better than I did. And at 2:00 in the afternoon, his shift was over, and he went home. And so we continued working for another 4 hours, and it became more complex because the people, I think he had a college intern there, which I'm all for college interns. That's great, but they had no idea what we were doing.
Right.
And so when we try to look at an exception or look at some issue, it turned into a series of phone calls, and it was just much slower and much more difficult. And so if I was giving advice to somebody that was setting up for that, I would say just make sure that the someone on the ground knows exactly what's happening, and it's just going to go much smoother.
And that kind of leads into kind of a sub question we have is when there's poor planning and there isn't just a lot of advance for these projects, what do you think the implications are? What do our clients risk if you're not having a really succinct, really clear decommission plan?
Well, usually you can work through it. If you get the right people on the phone, you're talking to people and you get the right people. Obviously, it's faster and smoother if everything goes according to plan. But we all know plans have exceptions; things happen. It's smoother that way. The last thing we want to do is not take some equipment out that we're supposed to take, or even worse, is take something we're not supposed to take.
Exactly.
If so, that communication, just clear communication, step by step. This is what we want. This is what we want done. This is what we don't want done. It usually works out fine, but just understand that there's a myriad of details, and something. And I'm mainly speaking on the client side. Something's going to be missed, and so we just need somebody there that we can talk to before we move forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. When we head into kind of the end of our episode, we ask all of our guests kind of a vision cast, a forecast question. So for you, I've got, if we're looking 3 to 5 years out between now and 2030, what do you think will be the hardest operational problem in this industry? And how is HOBI already kind of out in front of it?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't remember talking about that one. So, the challenges, the data center, we're all hearing about the data centers and we're all hearing about the issues there. So that anything around data center work is a challenge. It's going to be a big challenge. And the speed and just catering to that massive client base is a challenge. I was told in any presentation I give, I have to say AI at least one time.
Yep.
But okay, I got it. So, but we're implementing, I won't go into details, but we're like a lot of ITADs, we're implementing AI, better accuracy, faster processing of materials. So we're implementing AI throughout our process and making a lot of headway there. It's coming pretty fast and working very well. So
that's awesome. That's awesome. I think just the for the short time that I've been in this industry, what I've realized is the quality of an ITAD is the quality of their operations. If you don't have processes that are dialed in, you can't really be successful in our business. So it's been really special to see what you've done here and from all of our facilities, from global outreach to just the stuff that's here at home. But it's cool what you are doing and have done with your team. So
thank you.
Absolutely.
Appreciate
Don,
that.
Thank you so much for your time. This was super awesome. We are super excited to continue to give industry insights. We're going to have more episodes and more good content, more quality education, and we will see you guys for our next episode. Thanks so much, Don.
Thank you.
All righty.
Bye-bye.